Politics is war without bloodshed, while war is politics with bloodshed. Mao Zedong, Chinese politician, revolutionary, and political theorist. All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Today, we are going to talk about some good news. We're going to have a frank conversation, however, because it's something that needs to be had. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about Ross Ulbricht being free now. He is a free man. This is objectively, undoubtedly a good thing, period. Like that's there's no argument. It just is. But there's no but on his freedom. There is a but on how the Libertarian Party, the Liberty Movement is acting somewhat, or how they might act. So today I'm going to give you, so I have been a critic, not of Ross Ulbricht, but of our party, of our leadership. I've been a critic of Donald Trump, who signed the pardon. And so from today, you are going to hear the most honest and objective perspective from somebody who has been a critic. And I've been heavily cynical. You're not going to hear from anybody else anything better. I promise. Because I'm going to talk about the people that were responsible for getting Ross free. I'm going to talk about the critics. I'm going to talk about politics. I'm going to talk about being honest. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. However, the first thing we have to do is because, look, I know my audience may not all be libertarians. Maybe you're watching and you're a Republican that's, like, oh, yeah, you libertarians are all right, but you're a bit radical, which is true. We are. You might be a Democrat. You might be an independent. You just, if you're a libertarian, chances are you know full well who Ross is and what happened. If you're not a libertarian, you may or may not know. And I've seen some tweets out there that are like, whoa, this guy shouldn't be freed. Well, he did this thing, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this video clip. This video clip comes from John Stossel. It's 5 minutes. So I'm just going to play it. And the idea being that once I play this in 5 minutes, you're going to have, most everything you need to know about Ross Ulbricht. Now, I think this video clip is actually a bit old. He posted it yesterday, but I think it's an older clip. I think it It's like something that some work that he had done a while back. So let me go ahead and play this, and I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop it and talk about it at some point. I'm just going to play it and let you hear it, and then we're going to get into the show after that. In fact, I'm not even going to be on the screen because there's really no reason for me, because I'm not going to. So I'm just going to play it. So in 5 minutes, we are going to we're going to come back after this, and we're going to talk. We're going to have a frank conversation, so that hopefully the liberty movement, the Libertarian Party more specifically, moves forward in a productive way, because there is a current risk that that we don't. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. So let's get that clip played.
I shut down Silk Road, the online drug site. They called that a major victory over drug abuse.
Silk Road generated more than $1 billion in illegal business.
The most sophisticated and extensive criminal marketplace on the internet today.
Because people bought drugs on the site anonymously. Silk Road's founder had bragged the state is unable to get its thieving, murderous mitts on the site. But he slipped up. He accidentally used his real name, Ross Ulbricht, on an internet forum, and the state found him.
The FBI has arrested the reputed mastermind of a popular online black market for drugs.
Then Judge Catherine Forrest said because Silk Road was a black market of unprecedented scope, she would sentence Ulbricht to life in prison with no possibility of parole ever.
He said, "Mom, it's a death sentence. It just takes longer." And he's right. This is for all nonviolent charges.
She and others say it was unfair to lock Ross up forever for a nonviolent crime. But why should we care? Who was Ulbricht anyway? He seemed nice enough.
Pretty sure I want to start a family in the next 5 years.
As a kid, he was a quiet nerd, then an Eagle Scout, excited to go to college. But in college, he became a libertarian. And he wrote, "I want to use economic theory as a means to abolish the use of coercion." Coercion, meaning force. He viewed laws against drugs as coercion, force that stops peaceful people from living the way they want. He was right, but many Americans hate and fear drug use.
You're breaking up the social fabric of our country.
They applauded when the judge announced Ross would be in jail forever.
This is a judge who finally got it right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We all agree here on that?
Concur.
Life in prison without parole?
Yep.
Anybody else, any of the wise guys want to do it? That's what you're going to get.
Give me a break. Prison without parole is not going to stop the sale of drugs. We should have learned that from America's attempt at alcohol prohibition. Once you're an adult, if you want to buy intoxicants, should be your right. Where that's legal, sales are done without violence, and the products sold are safer.
This is your brain on drugs.
Yes, many drugs are dangerous. Some who bought drugs on Silk Road died.
At least 6 people died.
His mother said nonviolent guy. No.
Silk Road had some rules, at least, like nothing that harmed or defrauded. No child pornography was allowed.
But now that the government's closed Silk Road, replacing the site with this notice, other illegal sites have opened, and they offer more drugs.
These other sites, I've heard that they're just open season, anything. So they're actually worse and multiple times bigger.
She'd actually never seen them, so we used the web browser Tor to show them to her. It's not like they got rid of these things. Here's another one.
And by the way, Silk Road had 12,000 listings when it was taken down.
The new sites offer more than 100,000.
So I guess they weren't scared by Ross's life sentence, as the judge said.
But law enforcement keeps bragging about successes.
The dark net is not a place to hide.
Here's Attorney General Sessions announcing that they'd shut down another website.
We will use every tool we have to stop criminals from exploiting vulnerable people.
But the shutdowns hardly make a difference. New sites appear.
Critics will say, as we shutter one site, another site emerges. And they may be right. But that is the nature of criminal work. It never goes away.
Never, ever. Heroin. So they didn't stop anything.
No, there was a spike after the sentence was given. It had the opposite effect. It's a travesty what's going on.
Still, I find it hard to support her son since he was also accused of trying to kill people.
A murder for hire plot.
Trying to hire a hitman.
It's complete hearsay, basically, by the government.
Ulbricht suspects an undercover cop planted those messages.
A mortgage company will not take a screenshot of a bank statement because they know how easily faked it is.
No one was actually killed, and the government didn't charge Ulbricht with murder for hire in his trial.
But let's just say, for argument's sake, that everything is true. The typical sentence for murder for hire when there's no murder, because there were no murders, to be clear, is 10 years. Double life plus 40 years without parole for a young guy who, was a zealot. He was a libertarian. He believed in free markets and voluntarism. He is not a dangerous person.
No American is safer because Ross Ulbricht is in jail for life. He's just one more casualty of our drug war. Drug dealers shoot each other, shoot bystanders, and corrupt whole neighborhoods.
Police search warrant!
The police risk their lives and sometimes kill innocent people. Locking up Ulbricht won't make anything better. The drug war does much more harm than any drug.
All right. So hopefully in 5 minutes there, hopefully you know everything you need to know about Ross Ulbricht, right? Like in when I say everything you need to know, I mean everything you need to know to support the pardon. Now, if you're still skeptical, if you're one of those people out there, maybe you're a hardcore conservative, you're a Republican, you just can't come around to this idea because you're like, man, he was allowing heroin to be sold on this site. I'm going to try to give you one last opportunity to understand. But that's not the point of this show. You'll have to check out some other shows. I'm sure I've talked about it. I'll probably talk about it in the future. But here's my quick elevator pitch. When you ban stuff, it goes on the black market. When things are on the black market, nasty stuff happens. People get hurt way more than they would if it was out in the open. That's why prohibition was bad. That's why drugs are currently bad. Now, if you think, okay, well, maybe drugs, they need to be in a controlled environment. They need to be regulated. Let me point out to you that pharmaceuticals kill people too. And so it's like the risk is always there. However, the difference between a pharmaceutical, a drug that's considered legal, and an illicit drug, heroin, is that if somebody gets hurt with heroin, there's no recourse. They can't go after and sue the drug dealer and say, hey, you gave me tainted heroin, or hey, whatever, right? They can't do that. They have no recourse. But if I get a tainted drug from the pharmacy and it causes me bodily harm, I have recourse. I can go and say, hey, I'm suing you for this, right? Like there is an opportunity there. Or at least if nothing else, I can spread the word and say, hey, this pharmacy over here, they can't get their act together, right? Like that's the big difference. The big difference is the black market is unregulated in any way, shape, or form. I mean, there's rules effectively, but if you're harmed on the black market, you really don't have much recourse. Like you have nothing. There's not much you can do. You can't sue somebody. You can't raise awareness. It's not like you could say, hey, this drug dealer over here, he's selling fake drugs. Don't do them. Like, I mean, he might get caught and he might get shot and, like there is retribution that does happen, but it's an entirely different ball game. So if you like the society that we live in, where there's some sort of structure, there's recourse, if people get addicted to something, they can go out and get help for it, then you should want all drugs, and yes, all drugs decriminalized. Because that's how you get it. Okay, so that's my elevator pitch. Hopefully that understands. Now let's get into the details of this. So we know who Ross is. We know what happened. So what's the connection between Trump and Ross and the Libertarians? Well, libertarians and Ross, they go back a long way. So when Ross was first sentenced, libertarians, not myself, because I was not a libertarian at that time, but libertarians, they jumped on it. And they were like, no, 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 this is, the even if you believe like it was said in the video, even if you believe that, hey, he tried to hire a hitman, like the sentence was over the top, period. Like it did not match what we've seen elsewhere. But a lot of people were like, hey, the facts aren't there. Like this did not happen. And like the overall, at the end of the day, he was simply either overcharged or shouldn't have been charged, depending on how you want to look at it. So one way or another, libertarians were in his corner from the very beginning. And I don't mean just the Libertarian Party. I mean, even libertarians who maybe are not part of the party, maybe they're part of a different party, whatever. Libertarians all over, people who were already mindful of liberty, they were in his corner from the very beginning. And so they've been advocating for his release ever since he got sent to prison. Now, I learned about Ross, I don't know, maybe around 2020, somewhere around there. I might have heard the name before then, but I was a pretty staunch Republican conservative for a long, portion of my adult life. And so, I held to the drug war. I was like, hey, we've got to make drugs illegal because, if we don't, people will, overdose on heroin. And then what? So I came from that background, but eventually I became a libertarian. And eventually I learned about who Ross was. And then I got on board. And I was like, yeah, he should be released. Now, I supported his release, but I didn't actually do anything in specific. So I never went to any rallies. I didn't hold up any signs. I didn't write any letters. I didn't call my congressman, and it's not because I didn't believe it. It's just I didn't engage in those particular activities. But I did support his release once I learned who he was after becoming a libertarian. So then we get Trump. In his first term, there was rumor that he was considering pardoning Ross Ulbricht, and then he didn't do it. Okay, fine. So he, like that happened. End of story. And then in 2020, I take it back. It was 2022. In 2022, Angela McArdle won her reelection with the Libertarian Party, the LNC. So she is chair again for a second term. And she had been working with some of the different campaigns. And at that same, in 2022, at that same convention, because she was chair prior, she had invited Donald Trump, RFK Jr., and Vivek to the Libertarian Party's national convention. This is unprecedented. And you may remember, your host here supported that. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. And my reasoning was simple. If we can't get ourselves on the debate stage, if we can't get ourselves, in the limelight, if you will, right along next to the other candidates, well, then bring them to us. Simple as that. Because where Trump goes, the media goes. Like for the most part. I know that like for a while there, MSNBC would be like, oh, every time he's speaking, we're not going to play it. Yeah, they're still going to talk about him. Right. So I was like, yeah, bring him. Bring a big personality, especially one that's running, to our convention. And a lot of people were upset about that. They were like, whoa, 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 you're bringing the enemy. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, if we want our candidate on the stage with other candidates and they're not letting us on the stage, bring the stage to us. How simple is that? So I supported that. I didn't support everything that Angela did. Like you might remember that I was critical of the deal. We're not going to go into the details. You can watch my episode where I brought Angela on and we talked about it. I don't remember the episode number, but I'll put it in the show notes for you. But I brought her on and we talked about some of the things that were happening. And I acknowledged at that time, I said, look, I supported, you bringing Trump. I'm not a big fan of this, what we call the JFC deal. And that was a joint deal that she had made with the RFK campaign. It basically allowed larger campaign dollars to be donated to RFK, and then he would give us some of it. So basically, it was kind of like you created this entity that had a larger ability legally for donors. And so that was what it was. But I wasn't a big fan of it. Not going to rehash that here. You can go watch the episode, and I explain myself in that episode. And so at our convention, Donald Trump, not technically at the convention itself, but during the convention, after hours at an event, he was there with a bunch of the libertarians, and I think there was some, Trump supporters there too, and I don't know, probably some people that don't like either one of us. I don't know, but there was a big crowd, and during that time, he said, "If you vote for me," paraphrasing slightly here, "if you vote for me, I will pardon Ross Ulbricht." And the crowd cheered. They were ecstatic, because that's what they wanted to hear. And so, yeah, that's the connection. The connection is that Trump came to our convention and he made a promise to libertarians. Now, he promised that, kind of on the basis of like, if you vote for me, which, I know we like to, sometimes there is a time and a place to be pedantic with words. And there's a time and a place to kind of say, what are they actually saying? What I think Trump was basically saying is like, look, if I get elected, then I'm going to consider that election in part due to your vote. And so therefore, as a promise to you for helping me get elected, I will free Ross. I mean, effectively, he was seeking our votes. Yes. And yes, he did make promises to get those votes. Now, I didn't vote for him because I am not swayed generally by a single issue. And the other reason that I didn't vote for him is because I simply looked at his first term and I said, I don't believe that he's going to come through. And I don't see any evidence that causes me to change my mind. So I did not vote for him. That's simple. I was cynical. I was like, look, you're a politician. Politicians lie all the time. They say, if you do this, I'll do this. And so I was extremely cynical that he would even do it. I was very skeptical. I mean, you choose whichever words you want. I was skeptical and cynical, both of them. And so I didn't believe him. But, just because I don't believe something doesn't mean it can't happen. So I bit my tongue as much as I could to kind of say, like, let's wait and see what happens. Maybe he'll do it. Maybe he'll surprise me. And surprise me, he did. Because he did. Now, then we got into this day one, because he said, day one, I'm going to free Ross Ulbricht. Okay, cool. Well, January 20th comes. He is at noon comes. He is sworn in. And then he's signing document after document, executive order, pardons. He's busy signing them. And he's doing, and people are like, what about Ross? Are you freeing Ross? It's day one. And so I kind of took the position that, okay, let's give him through the next day, because he literally wasn't sworn in until noon, actually technically afternoon, because they had to go through, the different speakers and blah, blah, but he wasn't sworn in until about noon. And then after that, he's at an event. So he's not really going to be doing a lot of signing necessarily right at the event, because, you're waving at the people, you're giving speeches. So, you're talking to your big donors, you got a lot going on. And then he had the inaugural ball that evening. And I'm sure that there were events that he made stops at in between. So I was like, all right, look, let's be practical here. I don't think that we were so high up on his priority list that the first thing that he was going to sign was going to be, okay, I got to come through for those libertarians. No, that's not how it works. In fact, I'm not it could be that Ross's pardon was just in the stack somewhere. It could be that there was a specific priority, right? Like, hey, we got to do these things first because, for whatever reason. I don't really know. But I do know that not everything was going to get done necessarily on literally the first day. And so I was like, I'm going to give him a little bit of grace. And I'm going to say, like, look, if you accomplish this by tomorrow, then yeah, I'll consider that, by Tuesday. I'm going to consider that, the end of Tuesday, I'm going to consider that you coming through on your promise. So I believe that, yes, Trump honored his promise. Was it in the strictest sense? No. But did he? Yeah, he did. Like Like, just let it go, folks. And there are people out there that just want to harp on, like, let it go because you're being foolish. Yeah, like, seriously, if somebody says, I'll do, like, if I tell my wife I will do something, if I say, yeah, I'm going to do this this weekend, and then, like, I get it done toward the end of Sunday night, instead of Saturday, you know, it got done. Or if I say I'm going to do this in the next couple of days, right? Like, I'm like, there's not an exact 1-to-1 comparison here, but I think hopefully you get the gist. I tell my wife I'm going to do something and I do it and I'm a little bit late. I did it. I came through. I honored my word, you know? And if it's buried, and if that something is buried in a long pile of other things that I needed to do, I think it's reasonable to give grace. So we're done talking about that. Like that's it. Like I'm not going to harp on that more. If anybody out there is going to be like, no, he didn't honor his promise, I'm just going to laugh at you. That's it. Just plain and simple. I'm going to laugh at you. Now, your next question might be, well, DL, do you regret your cynicism or your vote because you were wrong, right? No, not really. I've talked about this before. How do we evaluate a decision? There's a book by Annie Duke that I tell people you cannot judge whether or not your decision was good based on the outcome. You have to judge whether your decision was good based on the information that you had available at the time to make that decision. So sometimes you will make a good decision and the outcome is good. Sometimes you will make a good decision and the outcome is bad. So in determining whether or not my decision was good, I go back and I say, what did I say? I never said ever at any point that he would not do it. Like, that would be an actual claim for which I would have been wrong. I just said, I don't believe that he's going to do it based on his history of not doing things that he promised, based on the fact that he's a politician. And everybody can acknowledge, or should be willing to acknowledge, that 99% of the time, politicians tell you what you want to hear and then don't follow through. They do it all the time. So at the end of the day, when we go back and we look at me being cynical and saying, like, I don't think he's going to do it based on his history, there was nothing wrong with my decision. Now, if other people saw something and said, well, one of the arguments I saw was, he's got different people around him now. Things are going to be a little different. Okay, that's fair. That was how you made your decision. That's not what I made my decision on. I looked and I said, I don't know. I don't think that's good enough. I want to see some results first. And I say this all the time. The reason that we really like people like Thomas Massey is because if he says he's going to do something, nobody doubts him. If he says, I'm going to vote no on this bill, nobody has any doubt. Why? Because of his history. Because we know what he's going to do. We know that if he says, I'm going to vote no on this bill, we know that it matches with his prior history. We say, yeah, he's going to vote no on that. Why do we know that? Because he's voted no on all these other bills that were similar for the same reason, right? The history gives us that confidence. Trump's history did not give me that confidence. So when I look back, I don't regret my vote or my cynicism. Not to mention, those kind of things. Politics needs people like me. Because if politicians want to get voted, they want to get votes, they need to learn to deliver first, right? We need to get our politicians away from this attitude of, I'm just going to promise the world and get votes. We need to be tougher on them. The world needs more people like me. I mean, it's my podcast, so I get to boast a little bit, but the world, it does. It's true. The world needs more people like me. They need people that are willing to say, nah, I'm kind of skeptical. I'm not voting for you because I don't believe you. And you're going to need to, I'm raising the bar for what you need to do to get my vote. And that is, you need to deliver. Now, the first time around, 2016, because he had not yet been in public office, yeah, we could say, man, maybe this guy is different. And then there's an argument to be made at that point. But after he's been in office, now we have a record. And now people's cynicism is legitimate. Hey, he didn't follow through with a lot of things he said. Major campaign promises. We didn't get a wall. We didn't, Mexico didn't pay for it, right? Like there were a lot of, you can go down the line and you can see here are major things that he either did not accomplish or doesn't appear to have tried to accomplish. That's why I give it two elements. I say, look, did you accomplish it? Or did you put in the effort that shows me that you tried? Because I get it. The president can't just do everything. It's not how our system works. So he's got to get Congress's buy-in sometimes. Sometimes he's got to work around the regulations that are in there. Sometimes, you can make a promise and say, I'm going to do this, and then find out he doesn't have the legal authority to do it. Right. And so, or maybe there's something that's in his way, obstructing, right? Like that's not within the purview of his job responsibility, whatever. So I just look and I say, what did you do to either try and accomplish a thing, or did you accomplish a thing? And I think that's about as fair as you can get with a politician. So then the question becomes like, okay, well, some people believed him. Angela had conversations with him. We've all seen the picture of her sitting at the table, literally with Trump. She, like, I think it's kind of cool, right? Like, look, if I was the chair of the LNC and I had an opportunity to go and sit at Donald Trump's table, you could bet your ass I would have been there. Now, does that mean I agree with everything? No, it's still true. I have some disagreements, and that's fine. But if we're talking about getting a seat at the table, she literally did that, like quite literally. So then the question is, was the gamble worth it? Well, I think for Ross, absolutely. Ross and his family and his friends, absolutely. He's free now, and he should have never been locked up. So for 100% for him. Now, when it comes to the LP, the Libertarian Party, and Liberty, I'm not so sure. And the reason for that is the LP, Libertarian Party, is a political entity. Now, I know we like to argue and say, well, we should be doing this way. What we are is a political entity. We operate under certain rules and regulations, and we have limitations that other entities do not have. So therefore, it makes sense to me to say, if we're going to work with this kind of entity, then we should work as the entity is designed to operate, which is to get people elected from our party and help move legislation. So I look at it and I say, well, what is the benefit to the LP in 4 years? And a lot of people will say, well, this opens a lot of doors. Maybe. But here's the thing. Pardons happen all the time. Let's be honest. Joe Biden just pardoned a bunch of people, half of his family, right? Does that mean that there's more freedom? Is there more liberty because of that? No, he was criticized for it. At best, it sets a precedent that maybe because he pardoned people that hadn't even been convicted. So at best, it kind of reinforces this idea that you could just pardon anybody, whether they've been convicted or not, for, and maybe they should be convicted, right? So I think in his particular case, it sets a precedent on using that power, but not necessarily liberty for other people, right? Like, let's be honest. We have to have honest and frank conversations. And I know some people are not going to like hearing this, but Ross is free. I presume today, I believe I saw a picture of him, like walking, like, I think he's actually physically already out of jail. If I'm wrong, then I apologize, but I believe he is. Okay, great. That's fabulous. Awesome. He should be. But guess what? All the other millions of Americans, they have no more liberty and no more freedom than they once did. You cannot create another Silk Road right now, right? That's not. You can, like, the federal government still, unless, I know Donald Trump was talking about, or there was rumors that Donald Trump would decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. But to my knowledge, that has not yet happened. Okay. But even if it does, that's because of a separate action. So even if Trump does sign an executive order decriminalizing marijuana in some way, that's because of that executive order, not because Ross is free. So we have to learn to delineate things and say, okay, was this a good move for the Libertarian Party? Questionable. right? And a lot of it, and maybe it was, maybe there's some information that we don't know about that would really change my mind. But based on the information that I have available with me right now, evidence, concrete information, not speculation, not, hey, you know, I talked to Trump and look what happened. Okay, but what did you talk about? What did you promise? What did, there are any number of questions that I can ask. And before I can definitively say yes or no, I need to have some of that information. Until I do, I'm going to be skeptical and say, I don't know. I don't think that the Libertarian Party has any more strength in politics than it did a week ago, 6 months ago. Because a lot of politics is very in the moment, but also long-term at the same time. And again, you might think, well, DL, you're just, you're just not wanting to give credit. No, I'm giving credit, full credit. And I gave it last night, 100%. I said, look, Angela, you did a good job. I said it like in several different tweets. Big kudos to you for this, because the truth is she worked with Trump on some level and she took a lot of heat for it, a lot. Some of it you could say deserved. Some of it definitely is not deserved. And so for her, she might look at it and say, based on the knowledge that she has that I don't have, she might say, yeah, it was absolutely worth the gamble. But until I have more information, I can't really say that. I don't know that. I don't believe that in 4 years, this event, this one particular event, is going to position the Libertarian Party or the Liberty Movement to have any more influence than it once did. I look at this as one of those in the moment things like, hey, we got one thing accomplished. That's good. But then you have to consider other things like, are the moves that you're making going to bring people into the party? Are they going to sway people to our view? Or are we just going to keep bickering and fighting about things? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. But before we get into all that, let me let you guys know that, hey, you know what? I want you to do me a favor. If you enjoy this show, I want you to be sure to hit that like and subscribe button to my channel. For the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode, right? Because I'm putting in a lot of work here. And I'm trying to make sure that I deliver good quality content for you to watch. So let's take a look at some of the comments here and see what we can find. Let's see what we got here. So, bam, we got some comments there, and let's pull them up on the screen. I'm gonna scroll right back up here to the very top. There's quite a few, so I probably will miss some because we're doing this live on the spot. So let's see what we've got here. Now Snowden says Kagala, yes. Snowden should be next. There's a long list of people that should be pardoned. So hopefully this is just the beginning. Hopefully there are others. And I've seen that like Elon Musk has reportedly told people who tweeted at him and they were like, how about so-and-so? Roger Ver, I believe, is another one. And he was like, I'll inquire. Like, all right, awesome. That's good. I like to see that. So this is objectively a good thing. Dexter Taylor here. Somebody says, yep, that's another name. Let's see what else. Give Trump keeping that promise. Absolutely. I think Trump kept that promise and he surprised me. He really did. I won't hide from it. Like, yeah, I was skeptical. I didn't believe he'd pull through, but he sure as heck did. Let's see. I'm curious what Liberty Dad thinks about the 5 different PACs who have paid money to Angela's 2 corporations. Unfortunately, that is not the topic of this show, nor do I have enough knowledge to even comment on that. So I will just let that one sit. And to be honest with you, I don't think I'm going to get into that because I really don't want to get into party politics. I want this show to be something that we can send to our Republican friends or Democrat friends or independents, socialist, communist, whatever. And I want them to be able to watch it and go, okay, I understand liberty just a little bit better than I did before I watched your show. I don't really want this show to be LP Insider Baseball so much. There's other shows that want to talk about that. There are other people that's what they do. Personally, I tend to find that a lot of that is just a waste of my time. There may be something there that's negative, but the sleuths that want to spend that time, if they want to dig up information, then present a good argument, and then, maybe I'll be persuaded, maybe not, but that's fine. But I'm just letting that one go. Let's see. Has he said anything about appointment of a libertarian to his cabinet? So I talked about this on a prior episode. RFK is supposedly the libertarian by virtue of him being a official libertarian member. Now, I said at that episode that I don't believe that he is the libertarian that libertarians understood to be. How did I say it? I don't believe that he is what libertarians had in mind when they got the promise of a libertarian in the cabinet. Now, we could argue that to death, and people have, okay, what about this position? What about that position? Is he libertarian enough? He doesn't hold enough libertarian positions. What about, like, I think we need to make it more simple. We spend way too much time arguing about these things and just say, look, I don't think when that promise was made, I don't think that's who people had in mind. Plain and simple. So I would say that there isn't a libertarian in the cabinet. That doesn't mean that RFK won't necessarily do some good things. He might, and they may be things that we can appreciate. I mean, Trump just pardoned Ross, and I wouldn't consider Trump to be a libertarian, but that doesn't mean that he can't do things that move the needle toward liberty. And I think in this particular case, as it's specific to Ross, he certainly did, because Ross has his freedom. So let's see, whatever. What else? Trump continues to surprise me. Time Surfing Alien says, cabinet choices. Now this, he may do a good job this time around. He might. And I will acknowledge it if he does. See, this is the thing that we have to remember. It's okay to be skeptical and cynical, but it's not okay to not acknowledge, okay, I'm surprised. Caught me off guard on that one. I didn't believe they would do it. Or if you made a very specific pronouncement, if you said he won't do this, then it's not okay to not acknowledge and say, okay, I was wrong, right? We have, nobody wants to trust somebody that's always right, even when they're wrong, that thinks they're always right when they're wrong. What else we got? My problem is now a lot of libertarians say this was the gold nugget, so Trump can now do no wrong. I don't know if libertarians will necessarily say that, but they may behave that way, in which after the comments section here, I will get into that more in just a moment. Let's see, what else do we got? Joe Hanush says, I'm happy Ross is free, not happy, putting it lightly. LP abdicated fiduciary duty, countless lives lost, trillions in money gone, trillions of dollars gone, constitutional rights trampled, etc. Cost not worth it. Right. And look, if you are in leadership in the Libertarian Party, you have to acknowledge and admit that is a fair concern and criticism to say, okay, Ross is free. That was objectively a good thing, but was it worth it if we end up putting more people in jail? It becomes the trolley problem, right? And so we can continue having that argument. However, I think in the next segment here, hopefully I can make a case that, how we go forward. Hopefully I can do that for you. Let's see here. Kagla says, this was a finger to the DOJ at most with a pen, a demonstration of authority, maybe a peace offering to many libertarian intersections. Could be. It could be. It's hard to say with Trump exactly why he signed it. Did he look at the case and say, wow, this guy should never have been in jail? Well, based on his history and things he said and the way that he looks at law and order, I would kind of doubt that. Was it more of a political promise than anything? Perhaps. It's possible. And, and sometimes you do have to take a win, and you have to look, because in politics, you don't get everything you want. In politics, more than that, you don't get everything. The things that you do get, you don't always get for the reasons that you should get them. Sometimes you scratch their back, they scratch your back, and you get what you want, but it wasn't for the right reason. And that's the nature of things. We have to be, look, if we're playing politics, we're playing politics. That's how it works. Let's see. Tommy the Coffee Addict says, I'm coming in to say this is good on Angela. I dislike much of what she does, but I'm happy she delivered. Agreed. I will die on the hill. I don't think I'm gonna have to worry about it because she's getting a lot of praise and her detractors are very few or just not really that important. But I will die on the hill that this was objectively a good thing and she deserves all the kudos for it. 100%. I will die on that hill and I will be unambiguously clear about it. Let's see here. Move around here. Ross was a competitor to the criminal cartel we call our government. That's why they stopped him. That's one reason. Another reason is that government needs to, they need to do things so that people can feel like they're doing things, right? So sometimes they make an example of somebody. Now, sometimes they believe it. I'm sure that some of those people in that clip, they really believe that Ross was a dangerous person. And for those people, we either got to get them out of power or change their mind, right? Like that's just the way. Yeah, we got to get people in power that recognize when there's injustice in the justice system. Let's see. That Liberty lady says, so in 4 years, when the LP chair wants us to support the GOP nominee again over our nominee because of insert the thing, what then? She already wants Vivek to be the nominee in 2028. Cross that bridge when it happens. Because at the end of the day, the chair could say a lot of things and not get reelected. Something could happen between now and 4 years later. I mean, number one, that would be a third term, right? Because there's going to be the chair is up for election every 2 years, right? So she has to go, 2026 and win that election, and then she can get to 2028 and win that election in order to be able to support. So like we're looking kind of far out. I think we should focus on today. Worry about today. This is your brain. This is your brain on propaganda. Agla says, I like it. Maybe I'll try to come up with a video for that. That's pretty awesome. All right, let me skim through this so we can get through. There's a lot of comments in here. I don't think I can talk about all of them. Goodness gracious. You're a chatty bunch today. DL for chair. No, you're fired. So let's put it that way. So absolutely not. No way. DL's not going to be. Okay. So let's get back to the show. By the way, I want you to know, if you want to support the show, you can head over to libertydad.locals.com and sign up. $5. You can be part of the show. They're all engaged supporters of the show, discuss topics that you want me to discuss, response videos that you'd like to see, or anything related to the show. And I'll even have a monthly subscribers only video. So go check that out. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. If you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes will air live on Friday mornings at 7:30 or Friday evenings, whichever works best for dads, because I get it. Some of you dads got to leave the house and go to work. All right, let's get back to the second half of the show. How should supporters respond? How should critics respond? How should leadership respond? All right, let's start with the supporters. Because there's a lot of supporters out there. And I've seen some of them being, kind of critical. They're like, oh, if you weren't on board with this, you're not a real libertarian. You're not whatever. Okay, you need to be humble. Okay? Plain and simple. That doesn't mean you can't take a victory lap. You should run around and be like, oh, yeah, we got it. Yeah. Right? When Angela said, hey, this is my victory lap, I said, I said two things. I said, earned, congrats. That's what I said. It was earned. Take a victory lap for this. Like, she did the work. She told us she was doing the work. She promoted the idea. She brought Trump in. Like, period. Take a victory lap. But be humble about it. Right? Because in politics, you have to work with people that you may not like. You might need their support. You might say, DL, no. There's people out there. They're just bad faith actors, and they shouldn't get my support. Okay, fine. You like Thomas Massie? Thomas Massie, by the way, helped. He contributed to getting Ross free. And so let me show you something here real quick. Because if you like Thomas Massie, if you believe that you are principle over party, if you believe that we need to sometimes do politics, great. Then I'm going to hold you accountable. So here's this cool article from way back in the day. So let me get to my, there we go. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Get my screen up there. So Trump endorses Kentucky Congressman he once denounced. Wait a minute, what? So this is an old article. This comes from 2022. U.S. Representative Thomas Massie is back in the good graces of Donald Trump, who declared 2 years ago that the Kentucky Maverick should be thrown out of the Republican Party. Massie won Trump's endorsement Tuesday ahead of the Bluegrass State's primary election next week. In a statement, Trump referred to the libertarian-minded congressman as a, quote, conservative warrior and a, quote, first-rate defender of the Constitution. It's quite a turnaround from March 2020 when Trump denounced Massey as a, quote, third-rate grandstander for trying to stall a sweeping $2.2 trillion coronavirus aid package. While his maneuver failed, Massey's actions forced hundreds of lawmakers to return to the Capitol after a nearly 2-week recess, contradicting the wishes of public health experts who were urging people to keep a safe social distance from one another to avoid exacerbating the pandemic. So, Thomas Massey pissed off Trump once to the point that Trump said, kick him out of the party. Not even like, hey, man, I can't have this guy working with me. He said, you don't even belong in the party. And then Trump goes and endorses him. But it goes even further because when Trump was running, Thomas Massey endorsed him. In fact, if you go look up Thomas Massey on Twitter, you will see that he has a tweet about how he reached out to Trump to remind him of the promise to free Ross. And then he tweeted again right below that. And he pointed out, he said, when I endorsed Trump, I included this snippet about Ross Ulbricht. So wait, endorsed Trump? Wait a minute. No, yeah, he endorsed Trump. I mean, I want you to think about this for a minute. Once upon a time, Thomas Massey did what Thomas Massey does. He holds to the Constitution. He said, hey, spending bill, not appropriate. Voting no, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to force everybody to come in here and take a vote. He's doing things the right way. Trump got mad and said, kick him out of the party. That's pretty strong. Then later, Trump decided, yeah, you're a pretty good guy, actually. And then he flowered him with, positive comments. Then later, Thomas Massey endorsed him. He endorsed the man that once said, kick him out of the party. So, if we're talking about doing politics, if we're talking about principle over party, then show me. Now, granted, I'm not saying to people like Angela and other LNC members who supported all of her moves, I'm not telling you that you have to go out and be friends with everybody that hates you. There was a bit of back and forth here, right? Like Thomas Massey endorsed Trump. Trump endorsed Thomas Massey, right? They learned to work with each other. They had their beef, but when it was time to stop having beef, they stopped having it, right? And that's what needs to happen. So you need to be humble enough that if somebody is willing to come back and work with you, that you're prepared. Your door needs to be open enough. And the supporters need to be on board. Because if you're going to go out there, you're going to say, everybody that said bad things about Angela, everybody that disagreed with her, said this wasn't a good move, you're done, I'm not having anything to do with you, then you are lying when you tell me that you are principle over party. You are lying when you tell me that you're just trying to do politics and move the liberty needle. Because you're not doing what we see other people who are very successful in doing it. You're not doing what they're doing. You're holding grudges. So, yeah, you got to be prepared to work with people you don't like. And I've been saying this is not a new comment from me. Like, this is not a new attitude. Long time ago, I said, look, the Libertarian Party members of the Libertarian Party need to get their act together. If we're going to support Libertarian candidates going and running for office, whether they're at the local, the state, or the national level, we're asking them, go work with people that you don't like. Go work with people that don't like you. Go work with people you might hate. Go work with people that might hate you. We're asking our own candidates to do that. You cannot ask somebody to do something you are unwilling to do yourself. That makes you a hypocrite. That makes you kind of useless. So if you're on the winning side right now, you need to be humble. That doesn't mean that you can't criticize people. There's room for that. We have to have honest conversations. And I'm having it right now. But that means that your door has to remain open. Now, let's get to the critics. How should the critics respond? Well, you should be humble too. Now, I said a moment ago, I said, like, I did not specifically say Donald Trump wouldn't do that. So I get the pleasure of saying that I wasn't wrong. I can look back and say, no, I think that my position that I took was absolutely correct, right? Based on the knowledge that I had, I was not wrong in doing that. That doesn't mean that you can't, like in this particular case, that doesn't mean that you couldn't have said, well, I see it a little differently, so therefore I'm going to have a different position. That's cool too, right? Like but what we have to do is we have to look back and say, why did you make the decision that you made? What information did you have that was leading you to believe that? Did you make a good decision based on that information, not based on the outcome? The outcome doesn't change whether or not my decision was good. What determines my decision is good or bad is the information that I had available to me at that time. So at that time, based on the decision that I made, I believe that I was completely correct. So I don't have to say that I was wrong per se. But as a critic, I have to say, yep, Trump surprised me. I didn't see that one coming. And I have to give him kudos for it and say, yeah, he did a good thing right there. And I have to be willing to say the people that helped get him there, they also, they did a good thing. So to be objective, to be fair, I have to say, and I'm not saying it like I'm begrudgingly saying this, like just as a matter of good character, you have to say, yeah, this was a good thing. You did a good job, and you staked a lot on this, and you delivered. And I've talked in the past. I said, look, I want to know what you deliver, and I'm going to be measuring it. Well, Angela and company, they delivered. So they get the kudos. And I'm going to be humble enough to give it to them and say, yeah, you did a good thing there. That doesn't mean everything else is good, right? Like I can still disagree with other things. Each decision has to be evaluated on its own. And so I have to distinguish between them and say, okay, well, this one was a good one. This one was a bad one, right? Like I did that previously. I said it was a good decision to bring the Vivek, Trump, and RFK to our convention. I said that was a good decision. I said it back then. I supported it. But then I turned around and I said, no, I don't think joining with RFK for some money, I don't think that's a good decision. Okay. And you might remember I had Angela on and I asked her about that. We talked about it. And her criteria for success on that, she said that once the money comes in, she believed that a lot of libertarians would say, you know what? This was a good thing. I want to come back home. I'm going to be the prodigal son. I'm going to come back to the party. Right. And she believed that. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I said, well, if that happens, I will acknowledge that you got it right. It hasn't happened yet. Right. But this is how you become an honest and earnest critic. Right. You have to be willing to acknowledge when something is good. And you have to be able to delineate, this is good, this is bad. Can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right. Now, leadership in specific. What about leadership? Well, you need to lead with a bit of humility. I'm specifically talking to leadership. Why? Because you are leading the party. It's a different, like the supporters, they need to be humble because they might have to work with the critics. You just might have to. And I'll throw a name out there. I know a lot of people have been critical of Chase Oliver. Well, guess what? He's not going anywhere. He's still in the party. He still has supporters. We aren't big enough to have that kind of division. So if you want to do politics, if you want to move the needle for liberty, then do what we're seeing people that we hold in high esteem are doing. And that means you have to be willing to work with somebody that maybe was a sharp critic of you, that maybe even said, throw you out of the party. I mean, if Thomas Massey can do it, who the hell are you not to? So leadership needs to lead with humility. Why? Because not every decision me and others will be will I agree with. You should still take your victory lap. Absolutely, I'm all aboard. I'm all supporting that. But your job is to lead the party, not just to make moves. Your job as leadership is to get more people into the party, get more people active who are already in the party, position the party to do things. As the chair here in Duval, I have done some of those very things. And I've had some of my own critics here. I've had critics from other parts of the state call me up and say, "Why are you making this decision?" And in my mind, I'm not going to lie, I was like, "Why are you calling me? This is not even your domain." Right? But I like that happens. People are skeptical of leadership, and we should be. Because if we're not skeptical of our leadership, then we're not doing our jobs and we get crappy leadership. And if you want an example, look at Congress. Like literally all of them, except for like what, 3 people? Look at Congress. They're full of crappy leaders. Why? Because they had crappy people. And they're, and the crappy leaders create more crappy people. I don't know. I mean, that's probably a little bit mean-spirited to say, but I think you get my gist. Like, good leaders can inspire people to be better. So our leadership needs to inspire the supporters to be their best, the critics to be their best. Now, some critics may be beyond, and maybe you let those go, but you can do it humbly, or with humility. You can let people go. You can say, "You know what? I'm not even going to talk to you." Like, until you shape up. Like, because at the end of the day, it is a two-way street. You can't just be like, "Well, I was a critic, but you got to accept me." No, you have responsibilities yourself as a critic. And if you're not gonna, if you're not gonna be an honest and earnest, ethical person, well, then the leadership can just disregard you and move along and say, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And leadership's job and I'm going to use a profanity here, but Angela herself has said multiple times, "It's my job to eat shit and take it." And it's kind of true. It is true, kind of, and it is a thankless job. Like, she will probably, like, let's say that she brings the party to a new place at the end of however many terms that she ends up being in. Let's say that at the end of, let's say by 2026, the Libertarian Party is just in an entirely different place and they're able to make a lot of moves. She's not going to get nearly the amount of credit that she should for some of that stuff, because that is the nature of being in leadership. I mean, think about it. Think about all the CEOs out there, and like half the country seems like they hate CEOs, largely because they don't understand what a CEO does, right? Like, it's the same concept. Leadership comes with that unfortunate responsibility. And so you have to be willing to take. And I tell people, like, if you're not willing to do that, you don't belong in leadership. And it's a tough role. I've been in that role, not just at a local level, but in other entities that I've served in. I've been in leadership, and I've had to be humble. That's part of it. So for me, I look at it and I say, hey, that's how the supporters, the critics, and the leadership should respond. We should all be as humble as we possibly can. And we should remember that politics is a full contact sport, which means sometimes someone's going to wrong you, but they may come around. And if they come around, if you really want to move that needle forward, then you should be willing to have an open door. And it is a two-way street. So both supporters and critics have things that they must do. And if they don't do them, well, then they are adding to the problem. Now, I want to mention one more thing, because I saw something and I was kind of annoyed by it. I'm not going to tell you who it was. It was a fairly lengthy post, and there was a little portion in there that I just kind of got annoyed by. And it was talking about, in this particular case with Ross Ulbricht, there are a lot of people that maybe put in a lot of effort in many years, but then came and crapped on Angela, and that those people are dishonest. And there was multiple criteria, but I want to address something very specific, because I want people to remember. There are people in the party who have fully supported, and they have the receipts to show, they fully supported freeing Ross from the very beginning, or at least for many years. And then they may have come up and said, well, I don't think this was the way to go about it. And they may have been very sharp critics of Angela and others who were involved in this. So I want you to think of this analogy. The people that have put in all of those years, think of those people as pushing this giant rock up a hill, right? They've been pushing and pushing and pushing to get this rock up over a hill. They need to get it over to the other side. They're pushing it up and pushing it up. And then you get somebody like Angela comes along and she does a move and she gets that rock to the other side. Both parties, if you will, both groups needed each other. The first group needed to get that rock up high enough. The second group needed to get it over the hill. Neither one of them could have done it by themselves. So that's why we need to be humble, because everybody plays a particular role. And yeah, maybe somebody was really good on Ross for many years, but then they came around and they said, this is a terrible idea. Absolutely not. You're a horrible person. You should get kicked out of the party, blah, 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 whatever they might have said. And then maybe after the rock gets over the, crest the hill and it gets over and it starts rolling down and we're all excited. And then they go, okay, if they come around and they say, all right, fair enough. You made a good move. Everybody else needs to recognize and say, yeah, you still played a role. You played a role in helping move that rock up to the point that it could be tossed over the rest of the way. That's how the Libertarian Party will become successful. Sometimes we have to learn to bury the hatchet. Sometimes we have to learn to work with people that maybe we once hated. And history is full of people that have accomplished things with other people that they didn't like. I mean, and I'm not going to try to get into stories, but you can go and you can find stories of people that hated each other and then, reconciled. In any industry, everywhere, it happens, but it is a two-way street. So what potential does the party have? It's hard to say. Unfortunately, I don't know many of the conversations that were had. I don't know any of the promises that were made necessarily. For me, I'm a little skeptical that this particular thing in itself will necessarily open up the doors of liberty, right? I think it was objectively, unambiguously, without a doubt, a good thing for Ross, his family, and his friends. Period. I'm not even going to entertain an argument that it wasn't. After that, is the party in a better position to do more stuff? More than just free people, which is a good thing. But the question is, should we be doing more? Right? Like, should we be trying to move legislation? Should we be trying to, get people elected, libertarians elected? Yes. The answer is yes. Because again, as I said earlier, that is the entity that we have and that we're working with. That is how it was designed. That's how the restrictions and limitations on it are set up. They're not, if you want to do, there are certain things that you cannot do with the political party that you can do with like a PAC. And so if you want to do PAC-like stuff, then you should be in a PAC doing that stuff. If you want to do political stuff, then you use the political entity to do it, right? Like, I'm not going to go to a bicycle race with a motorcycle, right? It's the wrong vehicle. You choose the right vehicle for the job that you need. I'm not going to take my bicycle and try to go off-roading over big giant rocks, right? Like I might want a car for that, right? You see the point that I'm making here? We have to choose the right vehicle. And I'm not sure, like, was it a bad thing? No, I think this was I think this was an objectively good thing to do. Whether or not it was worth the, everything that was promised and all that, I don't know, because that's not information that I have available to me. But will it lead to more stuff? In itself, no. But how people behave is another matter. If the leadership, the critics, and the supporters, if they all figure out how to work with each other enough, you ain't got to be friends. But if you learn how to work with each other enough, then we could become a bigger force. So this is why I tell you, everybody needs to be humble. Everybody needs to play their role. Everybody needs to acknowledge who did what, when something was good. And we need to be willing to have an open door. Because when we do that, we could be even more successful. I mean, I want you to think about it. Think about what the Libertarian Party could accomplish if we hadn't had all of this fighting that we've had ever since before I was in the party. Think about that for a second. If people were more humble, if they were willing to admit when they were wrong or when somebody surprised them and did a good thing, if people were more willing to do that, if people were more willing to work with people that once didn't like them, if leadership led the party with humility and recognized that, yeah, it's my job to take shit and eat it. You know, if they were and treat people in a way where people really wanted to be in the party and to work with other people and motivate them, we could do more than what has already happened. There is more on the table to get. We're not getting it because we're fighting. All right. Let's look at some last comments here real quick. Let's see here. What do we got? Give me a second. We'll get some. Let's see here. Scrolling back up. Looking back here. Let's see. Will Polera? I don't know if I'm getting that right. Apologies. Trump kept his word and took swift action on day one. I agree. And I'm calling it day one. I know. I said earlier why I'm calling it day one. There was a lot going on, but the strict interpretation of day two, I'm calling it day one because it was pretty quick. So we'll let that one go. No need to split hairs, folks. That's what you call leadership. And even if you hate him, you have to admit it feels good having a strong leader back in the White House. Well, I'm not willing to say strong leader just yet. I want to see how things play out. I mean, it has only been a couple of days, but I will give Trump full credit for pardoning Ross. I will give Angela and those who worked with her full credit for getting Trump to pardon Ross. Right? Plain and simple. Let's see. Republicans endorsing Republicans. Meanwhile, libertarians endorse Republicans. Sometimes that happens. You know, it's the nature of politics. And you know, look, I get it. We want libertarians to endorse libertarians. But you know what? Libertarians don't seem to squawk when Republicans endorse libertarians, which happened here in Duval. We ran candidates for city council and we had Republicans publicly endorsing our candidate. Like some 20 of them almost got kicked out of their party or their caucus or whatever for doing it. It created a bit of a storm and we were cheesing over it. I don't know. Can you say cheesing anymore? Like, I don't know. I'm showing my age, but we were ecstatic over it. We're like, yeah, we're getting some Republicans to vote for us and publicly. This is awesome. Right? So for that, I say, may the best man or woman get the votes and endorsements. Now, it's another conversation when we're talking about political, the party leadership, but that's a different conversation. But just as far as regular libertarians, like, look, got to earn that vote. All right, let's see. Principles over party is endorsing Trump. You know, if you're a regular libertarian, you can make that argument. If you're a party leadership, I would say no. Let's see. What else we got? That Liberty Lady says the division within the party makes me want to walk away from the LP and go NPA. My local affiliate is the only reason I have not done that. I can appreciate that, being the leadership here in the local affiliate. And, you know, I get the feeling it happens. And this is why I say people need to be humble. This is why we need to learn when to fight it out. And then we need to learn when to make up and kiss. Not literally. Don't kiss me. We'll be fighting again. Let's see here. But DLLP was irrelevant before Angela. I mean, irrelevant is one of those words that means something different to everybody. So, I don't know. Let's see here. I wasn't cheesing over those GOP that got in trouble for supporting Eric Parker. That's why I never will go back to the GOP. I mean, maybe not, but I mean, some people were. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'll take Republicans voting for our candidate all day, every day. Kagala says, great comment, Kagala. I'm going to end on this comment. No one is pure. Nothing is perfect. Absolute. What a great comment to end the show on. All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed this show. Hope you found it informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com. You can go to, get my finger over there. You can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, make sure that you leave me a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. Also, get my finger down here. You can go to locals. You can go to libertydad.locals.com and join the community. I talked about it earlier. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Stay humble. Learn to work with people. But for now, I'm going to have to catch you next time because I'm out.